Ladies and gentlemen, from the Universal Church of Freedom, Peace and Justice, Deacon Gerald Celente.
Hello, this is Deacon Celente of the Universal Church of Freedom, Peace and Justice. Freedom, peace, and justice. At a time when those three words are not being spoken about, as the news is the war in Ukraine. All we're hearing is, let's hate the Russians. Don't blame the government. We'll blame all the people, all the Russians. I was looking forward to going to Russia this year. Never been there. Wanted to see what St. Petersburg was like. Wanted to see another culture. Wasn't afraid to go there. But never heard anything bad happening really in Russia that would make me afraid to go there. Figured it'd be a good place to visit. It's been under the Putin regime for a long time now. Haven't heard that it's a Ethiopia or in Algeria or in Lebanon or in Iraq. Oh, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Afghanistan. Wars started by the United States and NATO involved. Yugoslavia. So now there's this war in Ukraine. And all we're taught is, let's hate the Russian people. So you see all these companies pulling out, including McDonald's. So that's gonna hurt the Russian government. And all these sanctions that they've put on Russia. And now Brent crude oil is at $118 a barrel. And you're looking at a gallon of gas in the United States going up to like $5. And heating your house. And Europe, with all the gas shut off going into Russia, it was coming in from Russia, 40% of Europe's gas. What's that going to do to the people? It only hurts the people. As Judge Andrew Napolitano noted, they've had sanctions on Cuba since 1962. Same government's in charge, but the people are poor. Look at Iran. We've had sanctions on them since, 1970s? 1979? Still Iran. The people suffer. And all the people are suffering because of these sanctions. Not only the Russians. Copper prices hit an all-time high. Food prices are up like 6% on processed foods. Across the board, precious metals hitting all-time highs. Not precious metals, excuse me. The commodities, the number of metal commodities. Palladium. You know, they need that in automobiles, the catalytic converters. Over 40% of the palladium comes from Russia. So who's it going to hurt? It's going to hurt the people. There's not a peep about freedom, peace, and justice. Nothing. Nothing about peace. Where is the Pope? Where is the Pope calling for peace? Name me the religion out there other than the Universal Church of Freedom, Peace, and Justice that's calling for peace. Let's stop this. How do we solve it peacefully? Not a word. The only word is, we're going to attack harder against the Russians. So, more U.S. troops deployed to Europe. And more armaments sent in. You look at people that call themselves believers in Jesus Christ. And I am a warrior for the Prince of Peace. Like the politicians over there, like Mitt Romney, a Mormon. Yep. A Mormon that's active in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Very latter day. What Jesus Christ does he believe in? Not by his words. History shows, Romney said, that a tyrant's appetite for conquest is never satisfied. America and our allies must answer the call to protect freedom by subjecting Putin and Russia to the harshest economic penalties, by expelling them from global institutions. You ready? And by committing ourselves to the expansion and modernization of national defense. More money, he is saying, to the military-industrial complex. Look at the other politician, Lindsey Graham, calling for the assassination of Vladimir Putin, calling him a war criminal. Well, what if Putin called for the assassination of George W. Bush, who lied America into the Iraq War? Oh, and NATO followed. George W. Bush, a war criminal? We're going to get that guy, Osama bin Laden, dead or alive. And attacked Afghanistan for 20 years. Condemning what the Russians are doing, but not admitting what America's done. Barack Obama, his words, not mine, speaking of the person that is still running Syria, Assad. Assad must go. And so too have over 600,000 Syrian people that have gone in death because of the wars. So should he get assassinated, according to Lindsey Graham, for starting that war? Or the war that Obama began in Libya? Assad had to go, and so too did Gaddafi that was running Libya. Those are his words. Gaddafi has to go. And NATO went there, blew the place up, and now it's a hellhole. It was the richest country in Africa. So, Mr. Lindsey Graham, should Obama be assassinated? Or Bill Clinton? And anybody could Google this up. Madeleine Albright, UN ambassador, Leslie Stahl, CBS 60 Minutes. When Leslie Stahl asks Madeleine Albright, who was UN ambassador under Bill Clinton had put sanctions on Iraq and was bombing it continually. And Leslie Stahl asked Madeleine Albright, is the price of 500,000 Iraqi children under the age of 5 worth this price? And Madeleine Albright said, yes, it is. They're murderers. We have to stop this. If you don't believe me, believe a man that I believe was assassinated because he didn't want war. It was a thing called the Cuban Missile Crisis. Russia bought nuclear missiles that were bringing them into Cuba, 90 miles away from America. Why? Because America had missiles aiming at Russia in Turkey. So, John F. Kennedy, JFK, made a deal with Khrushchev. You take your missiles out of Cuba, we'll pull ours out of Turkey. Okay. Boom, ended. John F. Kennedy, he didn't want to go into Vietnam. months after he was assassinated, LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was the vice president, became president, ramped up the Vietnam War. John F. Kennedy said, mankind must put an end to war, or war will put an end to mankind. And that's where we're at. More missiles, more armaments, more money going into Ukraine to fight the Russians. They're not going to beat the Russians. All this is going to do is to kill more people. What's my suggestion? Peace. Stop. The Russians are going to take over it for whatever reasons they're giving. And again, America overthrew the government of Ukraine, the coup that we've detailed in great detail in the Trends Journal back in 2014. Russia's doing it a different way. One government replacing the other one. So here's what I suggest. Ukraine, surrender before more people are killed. What can be the worst outcome? Another government takes place. And as I see it, by the way, most governments, by their deeds you shall know them, are crime syndicates. It wasn't like you had a wonderful government over there to begin with, or the one before, after they overthrew, the United States overthrew Viktor Yanukovych. What would be the worst? You have another government in charge. Again, the people in Russia aren't living under slavery. It's a relatively free country. So if their government's running it rather than the other government, is it worth dying for? I don't see it like that. I think it's time for peace. Again, Europe is bragging. They're bragging about all the armaments that they're bringing into Ukraine. Armaments to kill more people before it comes to an end? It's going to come to an end, and Ukraine is not going to defeat Russia. I was talking to a gentleman that lives in Donbass. He's there now. And he's an American. And he said there were 150,000 troops on the Donbass region coming from Ukraine, and they were ready to attack. And his story is that Russia preempted the attack. Do I believe it? It's what he said. Not a question of believing it or denying it. It's a question of what's the end? Do you want to kill 1 million and lose? Or stop the war now and let's try to come to a peace agreement? It's not like if it's a Russian head of state rather than an American head of state, it's going to make that big of a difference. Again, living in Russia isn't living in a totalitarian government to any great extent. Do they have totalitarian measures on the people? Of course they do, as they do in the United States, forcing people to get vaccinated. You have no choice. We are the universal church of freedom, peace, and justice. We are opposed. We are opposed to governments telling us what we should inject into our God-given body. But that's the United States. So no nation is perfect. These are run by governments. We need peace. There are no religions other than the universal church of freedom, peace, and justice saying end this. Where is their God? Where is their God? Not a word. Not a word coming from them. These sanctions and these measures taking are only going to make a bad situation worse, and they are only going to hurt we the people the most. We need peace. Let's call it a day. We surrender for peace. How could we negotiate a better ending to this? Oh, which politician's going to run the show? Like they're all so great and loving and caring? NATO, Afghanistan. NATO, Libya. NATO, Iraq. They're talking about the civilians being killed in Ukraine, and it's terrible. But not a word about the civilians, the 13 million in starvation in Yemen. War brought to you by the United States and its allies. This is the pot calling the kettle black. We need peace. And as I see it, as a warrior for the Prince of Peace, let us surrender for peace. Let's come to an agreement before this keeps getting worse. Stop sending weapons. Stop sending more weapons for murder and call for peace. Because if we don't, it's what JFK said, mankind must put an end to war, or war will put an end to mankind. We are at the beginning of World War III. The only thing that the media and the politicians are doing is ramping it up. And as I've mentioned, when they asked Albert Einstein, a man that was very much involved in making the atomic bomb, what weapons will be used to fight the Third World War? He said, I don't know. But sticks and stones will be used to fight the fourth. Please do what you can to support the Universal Church of Freedom, Peace, and Justice, and Occupy Peace. freedompeacejustice.com, occupypeace.com. We are warriors for the Prince of Peace. Whatever religion, whatever God that you believe in, believes in freedom, peace, and justice. Thank you.